Yes. So in that way, of course, within our reality or human reality, or let's even within the animal reality, the whole existence is about basically experiencing results after over and over again. So therefore, for each of those experience of results, have to have a cause and a condition. So then, of course, that was general, but now if you just simplify it, then if you just think about just the present life, the whole experience from the moment of birth until the death, the whole life, let's say. Now this, we can also, from one perspective, we can also see this as a series of results. And so, in that case, if you use that logic, let's say, then naturally, for this present, let's say, life, have to have a condition, since it's a result, it has to have a prior condition and, let's say, cause. So, it's actually quite interesting every time during a lecture to pick a topic that will, let's say, open one's mind towards the philosophy or the teaching or the path of the Buddhism. Often, I think we either go to a lecture of Buddhism concerning Buddhism, or or whether it's a lecture, or whether it's a question and answer, or whether it's an empowerment. Of course, we have this curiosity of what it could really bring, what we could find. Often, I think, at the end of every lecture, almost, not that we become disappointed, but at the same time, often it's the case that we always come to the same conclusion. Same conclusion in terms of that in absolute, that there is no, let's say, nirvana, or there is no samsara, and then the other obvious thing is that the one subject that somehow balances things out is that of within the relative reality that everything exists, that everything does function. And because whether we call ourselves Buddhist or not, we all have this wish that, this sort of innate wish or innate aspiration, one could say, and that there is a way out of this whatever confusion that we experience. In one way, I think it's a good thing, because then that means that it's sort of like an evidence or a proof that innately all of us are saying, all of us want the same thing. That we all want some sense or some form of freedom. We don't know how, or we don't know what. Well, on the other hand, not that there's truly something negative about it, but then, well, actually, I've already said it, that we really don't know, even though there could be maybe an actual freedom or not, or whether there is or not. First of all, we don't even know. And that itself also brings a lot of confusion. I'm guessing that that's something that most of us always, from time to time, in our daily life experience, think about it over and over again. Yes. The usual way to, I think, go about I think in this introduction is very simply why we take refuge, why we take Bodhisattva vows, why we do anything that is according to the Buddhist path. I think some of us, we follow these paths, the ones that I mentioned before, like, such as the practice of the refuge and the Bodhisattva vow, or Bodhisattva way, and everything, because we have some sense of, or maybe some sense of rebirth, knowledge in terms of rebirth, that maybe there is some sense of causality, that if you do something good, something bad will come. I mean, something good will come. If you do something negative, a negative result. Or even though it's not so sure, but some level of, let's say, sort of trust. But some of us, of course, we have no background, or we have no history, or we have no relations in terms of these information of causality and rebirth. So therefore, it's harder, of course, to really engage into, or even to try to study, or just attempt to get to know Buddhism itself. So that's why I think it's very, very important, and that we, whether we are already long-term practitioners, or whether we are beginners, or whatever path or level we are on, that we constantly sort of examine how much of, let's say, trust, or how much of confidence do we have in causality, in rebirth. I think that somehow determines. Causality and rebirth, on one hand, again, is one of the most interesting, I think, interesting part of Buddhism. Most interesting part.
转世啊，这个议题在我们的佛教里头是一件最最有意思的事情。
And because all of us wonder where we came from, where will we go after this? Will this ever end, or will this continue? I mean, when I say this, meaning this experience or this life. And that's why I think it was very interesting that particularly Prince Siddhartha, when the would-be Buddha of our era, and before he became enlightened, and then began to sort of really investigate, really research this idea, this theory. And finally, like, I think this is just my own perspective, my own theory, and that even for Siddhartha himself, I think, prior to his enlightenment, he must have also somehow ventured into this path of liberation, finding of this nectar, what is known as nectar, this liberation. So he must have also, from my own idea, he must have also really ventured into this, thinking that there is something universally mystical, let's say, nature or truth about this path of liberation. So, of course, finally what he found was there was nothing really mystical about it. It was so simple. It was the simplicity, but when he every time when he engaged into finding something out, the truth of that, the method that he had to apply was a very simple one, simplest of all. And every time he did that, then he was able to find one truth, and then another, and then another. So, as we are on the subject of the causality and rebirth, I think he found the truth truth of rebirth or the truth of the causality by simply researching on the present experience, nothing more. So present experience meaning that whatever present experience is summed up by basically what the mind can experience through our five faculties. So what we can experience in the present moment, that is it. So just by examining on that, then he was able to somehow relate to the truth of causality and rebirth. So that's, if you can experience something, if there is a result, I think the logic was very simple. If there was a result, if you can experience any result, then that must mean that it had to have a condition, it had to have a cause. Without it, then there will be no result. Yes? So in that way, of course, within our reality or human reality, or let's even within the animal reality, the whole existence is about basically experiencing results over and over again. So therefore, for each of those experience of results, have to have a cause and a condition. So then, of course, that was very general, but if you just simplify it, then if you just think about just the present life, the whole experience from the moment of birth until the death, the whole life, let's say. If you let's go backwards, let's say, from right now. Right now, at this present moment, if you go in our mind, if you trace back our memories, going backwards and backwards, you can see that every memory that we have, like it had somehow came into being, and because of a series of conditions, a series of causes. For example, let's say a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. You like tea, yes? It's the famous tea here. I drink sometimes coffee, but even to make one cup of either tea, or coffee, it cannot happen just like that. But it has to have all the right conditions, and finally to have one cup of either tea or coffee. So what was again interesting right now, what happened was also that while I don't know how many minutes I've started this lecture, but the moment I used a very simple example, then I can see that all of you somehow lit up. So what I could say about Buddhism again is that in terms of introduction, is probably it has a lot to do with actually finding series of examples, but not just examples, but examples, specific examples for specific, let's say, teaching. That's I think it's quite interesting. And that during a Karma lecture, certainly a vocab or a term known as cup or coffee or tea, suddenly really brings something in. It's, but I think that is very healthy, I think. That is a sign that our mind is, although yes, we have through our Buddhist theory, we all have our still karmic debts, counters of karmic debts, and many other veils there. But nevertheless, our mind is not that disturbed, not that confused, because we can relate to what is needed, or what is needed at the moment. In other words, rebirth and causality. So, like that, if you can somehow find, if you can, let's say, study more and experiment more, particularly in this knowledge of rebirth and knowledge of causality, deeper and deeper, and also by getting deeper, if you gain more and more confidence, then we don't have to really bother ourselves to be calling ourselves, or to be registering ourselves, or to be known as a Buddhist or not. It really does not matter. Yes, because as long as we have that, then all the qualities, the innate qualities that all consciousness or all sentient beings have, let's say, that is also not exactly an appropriate way to put it, but nevertheless, so far that's how we can say that the qualities are innately there, or the sentient beings has the qualities. So whatever be it, since those qualities are there, if we become more aware of causality, then we will naturally progress, without effort. I think probably that will be one of the main foundations, I think, for Buddhism, for a practitioner. Of course, now the traditional way of sort of giving rise, generating this confidence and knowledge of causality is none other than the four thoughts. Known as the four thoughts that turns the mind away from samsara or from unnecessary circumstances. Of course, one can always attempt other ways or other methods. It's not a must that one has to use traditional methods, of course, but the traditional methods has their own benefit, has their own quality. So there isn't also any harm also to try the traditional method. Yes. I'm pretty sure most of you know the topic of the four thoughts. Those are very simply the precious human rebirth, and then the impermanence of life, and causality, the law of causality, let's say. And then the faults or flaws of the samsara. The first one is the preciousness of the human rebirth, and then the impermanence of life, and then the law of causality, and then the flaws or mistakes or faults of samsara. These are known as the four thoughts that turns an individual's mind away from unnecessary circumstances. So normally the traditional way of saying would be that it is unnecessary to watch television, no need to listen to music, no need to eat food, no need to drink anything. So of course, like they can be also additionally wrong interpretations, of course, sometimes. There are things like that. But most importantly, I think today I will just stick with the traditional way of bringing motivation. So, the precious human existence, of course, we don't have to be a Buddhist to see that it is precious, because, one can, logically, if you think about it, in every way, the human rebirth is the far most superior existence. Of course, one of the concerning introductions of Buddhism, one of the more interesting topic is that of the Vajrayana. Actually, one could say that in some, this is just again my own theory, that the human rebirth itself, just to obtain that, is almost like to live. I think a better way to say is to utilize or to understand the human rebirth, and more importantly, utilizing it and its responsibility itself is a dynamic. Did that make any sense?
有吗？
How? No, I'm not sure how.
不是 HOW， 是好，是 HOW 哦，不是好哦。
Anyway, the reason why I said that is because to carry out first to be born as a human being and until let's say, from the moment of birth until the death, to carry out the responsibility of a human life, I think it's quite a burden, I would say. So we don't need to really find out anything more about the secret practice of Vajrayana and so on and so forth. Because knowing what we must do in our life, knowing what responsibilities we have itself is, I think, everything. Because what we say, what we think, what we do, really, really matters to, of course, yourself, and not just yourself, but whoever is around you. So, of course, the formality, the initiation that should be received, sort of like into the Vajrayana way, is just some form of reassurance, or not reassurance, but somehow making yourself aware of your responsibilities. Yes. I also don't know if that made any sense. I nevertheless I was to continue. It is very important to teach each other. Anyway, now Vajrayana is something else. What we were talking about is the preciousness and rebirth. That's how we got to that subject. So, now that we know something about Vajrayana, or what I said right now, whether it's true or not, we do have now probably a new perspective of what, or how, or maybe why we call our human rebirth precious. The traditional way is to compare with all forms, all types of different types of rebirth. So, of course, the obvious ones that we can compare with, let's say, are like, let's say, those who are less fortunate, even though among human beings, those who are less fortunate, those who are ill, those who are handicapped, those who are mentally handicapped, like that, many. And then, other than human being, other beings, such as animal beings. Animals, of course, some animals are extremely bright and extremely intelligent, but they don't really have the means like we do. The qualities, of course, that they have is basically basic survival qualities. That's what they have. But I don't think they have their ability of their mind is and its usage is not more than that. Scientifically, one could say that it is restricted by their physical shape and form, from a Buddhist point of view, one would say, one would add on top of that and say that it is due to their lack of merit and lack of wisdom from their past lives. Whether we can see that or whether we can really see that or not, logically we can see that there's a big difference. And then, of course, similarly, there are countless and countless of other sentient beings that we can compare with. But, of course, scientifically those are not approved, so maybe it's not a subject that we should be talking about. But if you like fantasies, if you like fairy tales, fantastic worlds, and so on and so forth, I can share a few. In that way, I think, since the mind has no beginning, that's one, and it has no end too. Also, but not to be mistaken that the mind, when mentioned beginningless and endless, doesn't mean that there is an existing mind which has no beginning and which has no end. But anyway, that's something else. So, the mind can manifest almost anything, into anything, whatever the mind wishes. So, therefore, there is actually no really count or limit of how many different types of sentient beings are there and that are there. I mean, in that regard, we just, with this categorization of the 6 different realms, the human realm, we just sum up all humans by the humans' obvious potential and quality. I think that common factor was known as a sentient being who is able to speak their mind and can also listen. Not just hear, but of course also to understand the meaning. Just on that basis, we are all known as human beings. But otherwise, of course, each of us are uniquely different. So in that way, like when we talk about the 6 different realms, when we talk about, let's say, the animals, countless, and hungry ghosts, the hell realm, all of those are basically beings who are extremely, extremely confused. And from there to the other extreme is the realm of the gods and the demigods. So now the god realm and the demigod realms, of course, ironically they have almost all the things, all the conditions, all the circumstances to really actually go beyond samsara. But nevertheless, the entertainment is too good, the cuisines are too good, they're too delicious, and the enjoyment is unbelievable. So I think it's pretty obvious that they are extremely distracted. Remember when we offer the mandala, we think of all the wonderful things in the world that we offer. Well, within the God realm, they're actually able to experience all of those qualities. But all in all, in terms of which form or which vessel is most suitable for liberation, if you ask that question, then it is none other than this very existence, the human existence. And I think the reason is quite obvious because we are at a stage where we can experience extreme happiness and extreme sadness. And then of course, one can also, we also have the ability to also somehow experience the middle. Yes. And we are able to do this 24/7 actually, if you wish. But of course we have many other important things to do, so therefore we don't find time. So that's pretty much about, let's say, in summary, about the precious human rebirth.
这个就是所谓的我们转世人生的珍贵的地方。
I think one more I would add, which is that more than any other sentient beings, with human condition, with human rebirth, we are able to really express the purest of joy, the purest of compassion, and purest of love. We have all the means. We have all the needed means. Such as now, of course, normally the traditional ways we have to talk about the impermanence of life, and then the causality and all that. But to again summarize the three into one, is that this precious human existence is extremely impermanent. Yes. We are so fragile that if I don't drink this glass of water carefully, I might choke myself to a certain degree. It's that delicate. So this is just a very clean water with good temperature and harmless actually in any way. But yes, if I don't drink it mindfully, with awareness, with patience, yes, I could really get into some serious trouble, that's for sure. So one of my first advice as a Dharma teacher, be careful when you drink. That's a very fun way of how to say exhibiting impermanence of life. Now the next, what was it? Causality. Even causality, like of course there are all kinds of causality, so it's also sometimes quite hard to begin from what or which point to start. But maybe another way is that, let's say, if you have a fortunate rebirth, naturally, that is due to the law of the karma, one must have had prior to this life had accumulated positive merits. Or the other way is that, for example, the last one, which was what was it? The negativity or the faults of samsara. So, very simply, what is puha in our life? Yes. There are many forms of puha, but the most important, the most prominent and most essential point is list. So list are the first attachment. Yes. More than attachment, it's actually ignorance. Well, basically attachment, ignorance, anger, ego, jealousy, hatred, all of those. So those are known as, in Sanskrit, known as kleshas, or in English, afflictive emotions. Disturbing emotions. Of course, it's an English word, but if it's just emotions, then there are, let's say, joyful emotions, not so harmful emotions. But in this case, the klesha is basically it's a mental event it's a mental activity, but one that is born or generated from confusion, from something, from a very disturbed foundation. Then the other is obviously the karma. Karma can mean many things. Good karma, bad karma, neutral karma. So, klesha and karma. Two, and then the last one, I think it is accepted by many different schools, I'm sure. The last one is basically obscurations of habits. Yes, habits. Habits are very strong. Basically, in our life, if you have to find or identify who is one's or our real enemy, is those three: karma, klesha, and the obscurations of habits, habitual passions, and then the habitual pattern. So, if you can identify them, it's one of the greatest steps as a practitioner, actually. Now, these four traditional sort of methods or points that are introduced will really has the ability to strengthen one's knowledge and trust and confidence in causality and rebirth. Then we would know what is my condition or what is our condition, how strong am I or how healthy am I, and then accordingly, what do I need to take care? How do I take care of myself? All these things then naturally will come up. Of course, when we say 照顾我自己的身体 it's not just 照顾我自己的时候 of course, it's not just your 身体 but also your 你的心 also. Because both those are the two most important things. Speech is more or less combined, they are very similar with the body. Now, in terms of taking care of oneself, if you know that we are not easily disturbed by afflicted emotions, and that we can bear whatever magnitude of karma, then of course we don't really have to find a way to basically you don't have to go looking for sanctuary. You don't have to go looking for help and so on. But if you do know that if you can, well, basically it's like having a diagnostic on yourself, because then through that evaluation, if you can see that you don't have right now the proper means, you don't have the strength or the abilities, then there's no shame. One can look, if there is, let's say, a reference to go to, if there is a guide that you can go to, don't you? So now, maybe the next question is like, so what do we have to search, or whom do we have to search? In this case, of course, what we have to search is basically a method to eradicate these three points, these three enemies. And whom do we search is someone who has the knowledge of knowing how to deal with it. So, obviously, then someone like the Gautama Buddha, that our historical Buddha Shakyamuni, would be